Oh, hello. I've been wearing this poly piece for 10 days now, and I dare say I'm not quite sure if it's lasted the test of time. Some people say you can wear poly for 4, 5, 6 weeks, but I'm not quite sure about that. Now, I've put on this poly piece, you might have seen in my previous videos, where I have a piece that's leaf-shaped, and it just goes from here to here. And with the poly, it's very easy to do touch-ups and maintenance, and especially coming out of a shower of a morning. There's not really much you need to do in terms of worrying about the glue puffing out at the front, as you would have to worry about on a lace piece, for example. Because with lace pieces, the glue is all exposed 100% of the time, but with a poly piece, it's very much hidden underneath the plastic. Now, yesterday I touched this up because I felt that the Max Hold Sport, which is supposed to be a no sweat or a sweat inhibitor, which is pasted onto the scalp prior to applying the glue, had not done its job properly, and when I lifted it up, it had shown that it was all shiny and wet underneath, meaning that the sweat had actually transpired into whatever it was that had joined together the glue and the Max Hold Sport. I'm not exactly sure what the shelf life is of the use time is of the Max Hold Sport sweat inhibitor, but it was after approximately 9 days that I decided to lift it off and see what was going on. It was very wet and it was starting to flop around at the front, and when the poly is not completely adhered precisely down flat to the scalp, you can actually see the color of the clear plastic juxtaposing itself against the scalp color. So it's not a flawless mixture between skin and the plastic poly itself. The only time the poly actually looks seamless is when the glue is precise and it's gone all the way down, and you've pressed it directly in, and there's absolutely no lifting of the poly from the scalp. Because if you can imagine holding a piece of plastic next to skin, you're going to see a difference in texture or reflectiveness between the skin and the poly. Now, I've complained many times before about V-loops, which are the loops that are used in poly rather than knots, which are tied into lace netting. And I can tell you that the V-loops in this particular system have not really been falling out. I'm not sure if that's because this piece is made with a tighter hold on the V-loops, or if it's simply because I haven't really been playing with it too much. I've just really left it alone after doing my hair of the morning. I don't really touch it anymore after that. I do have what I feel to be a few exposed spots right there on the front hairline. I'm not sure if you can see that in this bright sunshine, but with a 720p camera on an iPhone 6, I'm not sure exactly whether or not you'll be able to see that sort of resolution, but I do find that it does become a little bit visible. There's about that much that's just going like that, right there, where there are no hairs coming at the front. And I find there to be a small problem here with poly. When you get a poly piece, if you're like me and you want to cut 3 pieces out, then they're going in all directions. They go in straight lines in terms of their stitching. V-loops continue on in the direction that they're placed, but when you cut it, you can't know for sure in advance which direction, whether they'll be coming this way or diagonal or sideways. And I found, despite my first experiments with poly, with the V-loops, that V-loops going side to side looked like a complete wall of hair, and so I thought that's the wrong way to do it. I need to make them go in lines directly from spine to nose. But on subsequent attempts, when I did use peroxide at the front and started bleaching across the front lines of poly, it was actually better to have them going side to side from ear to ear, because in that way it was a wall of hair, but with the peroxide blending the hairs from scalp color, let's say in my case I'm Caucasian or Caucasoid, the blondness seems to make the roots more subtle when they emerge. Now, I didn't do a very masterful job in bleaching them on this attempt on the last 9 pieces I cut out, and I still have 8 left. I might have to bleach them again in the future because I'm starting to feel it's quite hot, and I'd like to do a brush back look. And I felt like that was actually something that was highly attainable when the poly was side to side, ear to ear, and bleached nicely at the front. But when it's going front in straight lines towards from nose to spine, I don't feel I can brush it back because the lines become quite obvious to people. Now, this exposed piece of poly that I think is there, it's going to prohibit me from doing a brush back look at all. I'll have to keep covering my forehead because there's exposed poly. And like I say, poly, when plastic is placed beside the skin, you can see it. Also, you can also see it when there's no hair coming out of it. So if there's a blank patch of poly, even if you imagine there's a piece of plastic stuck to my forehead just there, it would be completely obvious to you, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. And so I think I'll continue to use this piece potentially until it runs out altogether. Basically what that means is that the V-loops have all fallen out enough that this piece is no longer wearable. Now, on previous attempts I've actually cut out along the back rim here, and I've attempted to cut out pieces here that were stuck to my forehead too low, etc. Or if there was a piece of poly that was exposed, I'd try to cut it out with scissors. This is a very messy method, and I think that if you ever do face a problem with the poly and you want to cut it out even more than it already is, you really have to take the entire piece off your head and do it very carefully, because when you do cut the poly out, there is a line of hairs that are cut to, say, 1 to 2 millimeters long, and that is like a bald patch that you've just cut into the front of the hairline or along the back rim or the sides or wherever you've cut. So it's very important that you take it off and you do it very carefully. And so, like I say, with this particular piece in bright sunshine, it's probably 25 degrees Celsius here now. It's quite hot. Could be 28 even, I'm not sure. It's going to get up to 30s. I'm talking about Celsius, not old man, obsolete imperial measurements from the Middle Ages, of course. And so I think I'll simply just continue to go to school with this piece for the next week or two or something like that. Now, when doing the maintenance on the poly, I've told you this before, it's extremely easy to do maintenance on poly. You peel it back, you get your fingernail in there and just start peeling it off. It just comes right off, the glue separates. And because your scalp emanates sweat, it has sweat glands, that's the wet side, and the dry side is where the poly sticks to the glue. And so when you pull it back, you'll find that there's no glue stuck to your forehead anymore. It's all stuck to the poly itself. And so it's very easy to do maintenance on that. And then, of course, if you've already adhered it back here, which I recommend, doesn't matter whether it's back here or here, that you apply the glue to your scalp first, apply the hairpiece so it's got some hold and it's going to stay in position, and thereafter you can apply glue to the poly so it's in direct alignment, get it right to the edge without touching any of the hairs with the glue, and then just press it down. No need for alcohol or anything like that, just stretch it down so it gets to the point where you know that your hairline would naturally be, and then because you've cut your stencil out properly, or you had it cut by the company that you bought it from, at that point you can simply just lay it down on your forehead nicely, and there will be no guesswork as to where the glue needs to go, because it's glued onto the poly and you just flip it back down and it's exact 100% of the time, which is something I really love about poly. It makes it so much easier to apply, so much easier to do maintenance on. At the moment, the hold in this weather, it doesn't feel like it wants to slip right off or anything like that. I've got the max hold, and now on this particular occasion I had the yesterday I applied Ghost Bond XL, which is another type of glue, but this morning when I got up I realized the max hold, the Ghost Bond had indeed come off away at the very front edge because it hadn't been pressed down hard enough or something like that. I'd done one kind of a thick layer on the poly itself. You cannot really control the thickness of the layers on the poly. You simply use your finger and you rub it in. There's no other real way to do it. And it doesn't absorb into it like it would into skin. So you can't really gauge the thickness levels, and it's quite messy, and it can come back up into your hair if you're not careful. And so applying multiple layers would be troublesome, to say the least. And so I think it's best if you well, to be honest, I haven't really mastered the use of Ghost Bond. Most of the front glue along here at the front is Ghost Bond right now, but this front tip here is Ultra Hold. Now I do suspect that potentially Ghost Bond is less melty, as in it's less simple for it to melt in heat than Ghost Bond. Ghost Bond definitely melts in heat, and it draws me to suspicion that Ghost Bond is the way to go, but you have to really stay at home in an air-conditioned room and not have a shower for 24 hours, as they say, and simply wait it out. If you've got something on tomorrow, if you're applying it today, then cancel it. Or use Ultra Hold and just know that when the temperature gets above a certain point, it's going to start melting until you find some cold room again for it to solidify once more. So if you want to make a day of it, if you could do it in the morning, stay in an air-conditioned room all day long in the summertime, you could potentially use Ghost Bond, but if you do sweat because you're a human or alive, then Ultra Hold might be probably the only way to do it. Unless it's winter, in which case it doesn't matter which glue you use really, because it's so much easier to use. But I find Ghost Bond to be troublesome nearly every time I use it. But I did try once on a video that was in 3 parts. If you look back into some of my old videos about my reviews about Ghost Bond, I was able to get a very strong hold out of it in the winter time when it was cold and it was very solidly connected. And I think it would have been a stronger hold even than Ultra Hold. But because I've got to go to school and face people I know every day, and I don't get along with them so well, unfortunately, but at least I'm an outcast, I don't really want them to find anything else to judge me for. And so I think it's best if I continue to do something that's reliable, and that is Walker Ultra Hold. In the future, if I have some spare time, I'll do some more experiments with Ghost Bond, XL, Platinum, what are some of the other ones? I'm not sure. Standard. And see if I can get some better results out of it. But for now, I'm going to continue to use Walker Tape Ultra Hold as my main glue, and maybe change it up a bit moving forward.